This is Michelle, of course, your instructor. I am going to make a little short recording here to give you some feedback about this lesson plan, and you can listen to the feedback and make some changes that I am going to suggest to make this a really more early childhood friendly lesson. So I just want to make sure I understand. Your lesson title says Flower Constructing and Labeling. And as I read over your lesson plan the first time and then the second time, it became clear to me that you were going to have the children make out of paper and glue and other materials a flower that they were going to then label. So actually what you have in this is several different lessons. You have the cutting of the paper, you have the gluing, you have an understanding of what a flower is, and flowers look many different ways. So I'm not sure how you want to address that. So that's my first thought is, would you want to maybe just have a variety of flowers for them to look at in a lesson as a start to building up to how would they make their own flower out of paper? And there's a lot of great craft making things you can do, but you have 3 to 4-year-olds in this classroom, and they only come 3 days a week, and they come some all day, some not. So doing something very complicated like this that has several lessons actually in the one activity list you have here would be a lot to ask of them. So I'm going to ask you to really simplify this and break it down into smaller parts. And this is a common thing that new teachers and young teachers do. I did it also. My director would often turn my lesson plans back to me and say, this is actually 5 lessons, not 1. So I really understand that in the beginning, when you're first doing and writing lesson plans, it can be very hard to understand that you really need to break these things down into single activity parts. So I'm going to try to help you do that by talking through this lesson plan. And the first thing I notice here is that these students are not there a lot consistently. And given all the illnesses we have, I'm going to say it's probably even less consistent. So when you have a group of students that fit into that category, it's really important that when they do come to school, because they're limited in how often they're there, that they have a very successful, satisfying experience. And the best way to ensure that for very young children is to do very simple things that do not require many steps and skills that require teacher assistance and direction. So I just wanted to say that first. So you want to think about that. This is very specific to the group of children you're talking about here. If you were with a group of children that were there all day, every day, you would still want to break this up, but they probably can handle some challenges, and their sense of community at the school and in the classroom hopefully is good, and that will allow them to meet challenges with some regulation tools. Okay, so grouping, you have this happening at center time. And they've been outside, so that's great. If you have flowers there, that's even better. You know, they can do some observation of flowers. You can take pictures of the flowers, that kind of thing. Then they are going to centers, and you're calling this an art activity. So right there, I want to just stop and say that when you produce something with a specific outcome, like constructing a flower and labeling it, that is not art. Art is expressive. It's using art materials to create something of your own expression. This is a teacher-directed activity with a specific outcome. That is not art. You could do a craft like this With older children, and it could be in the manipulative center where they're using their fine motor skills to build something. But it's really not, it doesn't belong in the art center as an art activity. I also am not clear on why you're having them label it at the art center either. So that would be usually something you would do like they could make a picture of a flower and then bring it over to the writing center if they want some words to put on it. But not 3 and 4-year-olds, yes. 3-year-olds, no, that's too young. So just think about that. So you have to decide here what you're going to really do, because you've, again, building a flower out of paper and then gluing it down and all of that, and then labeling it as a second activity is too much. You really wouldn't be able to label anyway because you have to let the glue dry. So there's a lot of things in there I want you to really think through. And then you can make a decision about which one you want. You're having students build and label parts of a flower. Again, you've got to decide, are you going to have them build a flower or build it and then for a second activity label it? You could use the labeling as part of a literacy activity, and you do have a literacy activity lesson plan you have to do, so you may want to just say, I'm going to do that instead. So, and if you want to have them build a flower with shapes, that could actually be a math activity because it's using patterns and shapes. So you could break this down into, the science part of it could just be bringing in a lot of flowers and noticing things about them, and you could just record what they notice about different flowers. And you could ask them to take pictures of flowers if they live near a place where there's flowers, or if they have a garden where they have flowers, that kind of thing. That could be your science activity. And then you could use these other things that you want to do here for 2 more lesson plans. So that's what I mean when I say you actually have several lesson plans in here. So I'm hoping I'm being helpful to make this make sense. And again, I do understand it when you're first writing these, you think you have to write a whole bunch of activities in one lesson. So you have your standards. I'm not sure how this fits in with mental wellness and cooperative social environments. That's unclear to me, so that's just a question for me. Demonstrates basic gross and fine motor development. Absolutely, you could observe whatever they do with the flowers if you bring a whole bunch of flowers in, you definitely could observe that. Are they able to hold the flowers, that kind of thing? That would be great because you could look at their grasp when they take hold of the flower. So yes, you could use that. I'm not sure about this language arts standard, and again, this is not a literacy lesson plan, so you can probably just take that out. I think you could leave in the physical education and science and take these other 2 out. So that's just a suggestion to make that would make more sense here. Unless you want to write back to me and tell me, well, this is what I was thinking. That's perfectly fine. So when you do this assessment here, I'm not sure how you're going to assess a lot of this in terms of demonstration, because we don't typically ask students to demonstrate a skill the first time we do it with them. So probably what you need, that's called a summative assessment. You're looking for a formative assessment, which is basically like it sounds. You're just documenting what they did. So rather, first of all, take out the health and mental wellness, take out the English language arts standard, because they're not part of your lesson plan. If you want to leave in the physical education one with fine motor skills, that's absolutely okay. The science one is great for awe and wonder. It's perfect. And I don't think you should do below standard, approaching standard, meet standard. I would just document what they do with it, whether they picked up the flower or how they responded to it. If you want, I don't like the idea of saying below standard when you're just giving the children something to do for the first time and you're already saying they haven't met the standard, which is an unreasonable expectation in early childhood. So I would prefer you did not use this assessment tool. It's not appropriate for this activity. I would prefer you use something that just basically documents what they did when you showed them the flowers, for example. That's all. I don't like the idea of evaluating or judging how well they did something the first time you do it with them. I don't like to assess them, period, that way in early childhood, but I know it's done. I just don't think it's fair to do it the first time you do something with a child. That's unreasonable and would not be something that I would advise anybody to do. I can see why you chose it, because you're looking at, how do I see this child in this profile of this lesson? So my job is to help you understand what would actually be appropriate here for you to use to assess what they did. And assess does not mean judge or evaluate. It means, what did they do? So when I had the flowers at the table, did every child come to see them? First of all, would be an interesting thing. How many days did I have the flowers there? What did they observe about the flowers over time that happened to them? So you could make a whole simple thing just out of that, and just really note which children participated, which children made observations, just as a way to inform your children's interest in something like this over time, or their observation skills. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for now. I'm going to just fly past the resources, because I don't recommend that you use all those materials right away with the children. You did not notice, you did not note what they've been doing. You say they've been studying plants and their purpose in the environment, but I'm not clear yet that they've had real experiences with observing a flower over time. So I would like you to rethink this a little bit. So I'm not going to say anything about your identification of the process of the lesson before, during, and after. I think, why don't you go ahead and just make a decision about everything that I've said based on what I've said, and see where you want to go with it. But you do have, in this one lesson, you have a science, math, and literacy series of lessons. So we can work to build on that if you want to, and I'll be happy to help you using these recordings. You can just send me things and I'll record responses to you if that helps. Or if you want to talk on a Teams meeting about them, that's fine too.